And a lot of times we think about our emotions as being caused by our thoughts. Like something happened, I thought this about it, which caused me to feel sad. And that is true, but that's not the only way emotions work. A lot of times we're in an emotional state and then that causes the thought. It works both ways. And we have all the science to back that up. We don't yet have the science to show how spirit interacts with our nervous system. But I will say in my experience, it's like when I can think of my nervous system as having a life of its own, as being a being that is relating to me, then that is, okay, that's my highest self and my brain and my emotions are all trying to fight for my attention. And when my nervous system is at peace, that's when I know we're all in alignment.
I'm Dr. Williams, and this is my podcast. I have 2 graduate degrees in psychology, am a licensed mental health counselor, and an expert in the area of spirituality. I am devoted to living my best life and am sharing it with all of you. I'm bringing my expertise, education, and life experiences to you through this podcast. Everyone deserves to enjoy life, and that is what I'm here to talk about. Depression, anxiety, grief, you name it, we all go through it at one time or another. I believe there's a better way to come at these things than mainstream mental health care offers, and I'm here to offer you my perspective and dig into discovering how you can feel good no matter what life throws at you. It is my intention to contribute goodness to this world, and the content herein is how I do that. But one disclaimer before we dive in. Should you decide to apply the information offered here, be prepared for improvements in your life. You may even live happily ever after, and you'll only have yourself to thank. This is Feel Good Now, the Dr. Williams podcast. I'm here today with Amy Hagman, and I'm super stoked to have this conversation because Amy knows so much about something that I wanted to talk more about on the podcast, and that is the connection between science and spirituality. So we're going to be talking about the nervous system specifically, and she's going to throw law of attraction into the mix and talk about how that pairs with manifesting things. So I am super stoked. Amy, thank you for being here today.
I am so excited. I'm going to just dive in and tell people who I am and why I'm here. So my professional career up until very recently has been doing leadership development with I would say my expertise is actually in emotional intelligence. So I've always had an interest in emotion and how how many of us don't like emotion or don't understand emotion and how we experience it in our body. That's always been top of mind for me. And more recently, in the last 2 or 3 years, I've actually changed careers a little bit and I've come out as a psychic and a medium. And so I've had a very different experience of my own nervous system since I've done a lot more intentional blending with spiritual energies. So I've learned a lot over the last few years, and I've really tried to combine kind of my educational experience with emotional intelligence and thought work with my spiritual experience. And so that's why it's led me to focus on the nervous system. But I am excited today to talk about how we can use the nervous system to help us with law of attraction and creating stronger, more effective manifestations.
So would you say that once you learned about emotional intelligence, and that's kind of just understanding your emotions, right? And having a really good grounding in what I'm feeling and what it means. Would you say that that helped you to tune into your own psychic abilities, or has this been like a lifelong thing that you've always known that you had this ability?
Ooh, that's such a great question. I knew I had it, but I thought it was normal.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I had it, but I just thought everybody had it. I mean, when I started having loved ones that would pass on and I would be able to talk to them, I thought, well, of course I can talk to them. Like they're my
Everybody's always
grandparents.
here.
And
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just because they're not in their body doesn't mean we don't have a relationship. I didn't realize how unusual that was. So I have always had it, but I haven't thought much about it. With the emotional intelligence, I will say most of the psychics and mediums that I know are very emotional people, because having that sort of sensitivity is really helpful. When you're connecting with spirit, it's always very subtle. And so if you don't have a very sensitive awareness of your own nervous system or of your own emotions, then it's going to make connecting with spirit a pretty difficult thing to do.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of a friend of mine specifically who he doesn't have a really strong sense of his emotions. When you ask him, he says he only feels anger. So
Mm.
what would you say to somebody that really doesn't know how they're feeling? Because obviously you cannot tune into your higher self if you are tuned out of your emotions.
I 1000% agree with that. First of all, bless his heart. I just have to say, a lot of men specifically only know how to feel anger because that is the conditioning that they had. So all humans experience all range of emotions. So there's that. Nobody's broken. We all have all the emotions. It takes time to develop that awareness. I recommend that people walk around with like a list of emotion words, and you can break it into categories. So for the category of anger, there might be resentment, there might be rage, like there's lots of different ways. So even if he could just start to focus on the subtleties within that anger, that will
Yeah.
help to kind of open up for him just a larger vocabulary. And sometimes for people, let's say that there's somebody that has been depressed for a long time, I will pull out like the 4 categories of emotion that we've simplified to like mad, glad, sad, and anger.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll pull out the 4 categories and I'm like, okay, so you're telling me you've never felt happy before. Close your eyes, think of somebody that you know that you would describe as happy, and tell me what you imagine they feel like in their body. What does their body feel like? Is it light? Is it big? Is it heavy? Is it slow? Like try to use a descriptor word, because we don't think about emotions as physical experiences, but they are. And so that helps to get people kind of a little bit more connected.
Yeah. Say more
Yeah.
about that, how emotions are a physical experience, because that's where the nervous system comes in, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Um, so I think anybody with anxiety will understand that
Yeah.
entirely.
True.
Anytime you have a moment of anxiety and you have that, like, it's like your whole skin is kind of ants or on fire and you're so uncomfortable, you just want to jump out of your skin. That's because you're having a very physical experience of energy. When we think about grief, anybody that's ever, whether it's lost a job or lost somebody, you've had an experience of grief, how exhausting it is.
Mm.
You're just physically exhausted when you're grieving. It's because it takes a lot of energy in the body to process that emotion. So yeah, they're physical, and it's the same thing. Like I'm a very kinesthetic person. I tend to move my body a lot. So when I'm happy, I jump up and down. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be 60 years old and jumping up and down because my body just that's what the energy moves me to do. So yeah, so they're very physical. And if people are not physically demonstrative, other ways they might experience this could be more subtle. It could be like they're clenching their jaw, or they're just experiencing a tightness somewhere else in their body. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Louise Hay's work, the Heal Your Body, Heal Your Life work.
No.
Okay, so we're going to dive into this after this interview. So Louise Hay has a whole book of like metaphysical experiences of emotion. So tying specific emotional patterns to physical conditions. So like grief is often related to the lungs and coughing
Oh.
as one example. So she ties the emotion that you're having, a physical condition, and then she gives you an affirmation to help you heal it.
Wow.
So it's a known phenomenon. Another phenomenon that's been documented, I'd have to look up the specific science journal, but there's been a medical journal that has found that people that have a trauma, like a large trauma that goes unhealed, like no therapy, no whatever, that they just repress and keep going, around 7 years from the date of that trauma, something will happen. A cancer diagnosis, a heart attack. It's like our bodies can only repress that energy for so long.
Wow, that's amazing. That really,
Yeah.
I mean, that right there tells you the importance of dealing with that, healing it, and cleaning it out before it does manifest into something that's really physical and harder to get rid of.
Right. Right. And that's kind of where I came back to with manifestation. It's like the clarity of what you want to manifest is directly played out by the clarity in your nervous system.
Okay, tell me more.
Scientifically speaking, we kind of know that the nervous system is how our brain makes our body function. It's like the great tree of life. Our brain tells our heart to beat, and that goes through the nervous system and beats our heart. It's also where we experience our emotion. And then at an energetic level, so for somebody that's maybe a Reiki healer or somebody that's like me that connects with spirit, when we're blending our energies spiritually, that happens in the nervous system. So if you were to think of your soul having an energetic field and your body is contained within that energetic field, your nervous system is the center of the energetic field. So with manifestation specifically, they talk a lot about getting into the feeling. Actually, let me back up. Let me say this about manifestation. You tell me if you agree with this or not. I feel like when people first come to law of attraction and manifestation, they think at the beginning at the thought level.
Yes.
Like, what do I think that I want? And what's my vision board? And it's very brain cognitive. Then the next level is to go to the feeling. How do I want to feel? And trying to create that feeling. That's beautiful. Focusing on the nervous system differently is like, that's super advanced level 3 stuff. And that's what we're talking about today. Because it's all 3 things. It's the thought, it's the emotion, and it's the spiritual connection.
With the body.
With the body. Exactly. And a lot of times we think about our emotions as being caused by our thoughts. Like something happened, I thought this about it, which caused me to feel sad. And that is true, but that's not the only way emotions work. A lot of times we're in an emotional state and then that causes the thought. It works both ways. And we have all the science to back that up. We don't yet have the science to show how spirit interacts with our nervous system. But I will say in my experience, it's like when I can think of my nervous system as having a life of its own, as being a being that is relating to me, then that is, okay, that's my highest self and my brain and my emotions are all trying to fight for my attention. And when my nervous system is at peace, that's when I know we're all in alignment.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that our cells, our system, our body, it has its own consciousness and it wants well-being just like we do. When we connect all those things together with our thoughts and our emotions and our body, that's when we feel good. That's why I named the podcast Feel Good Now, because that's the key. That is the key to getting everything you want in life. As long as you're feeling good, now you're in that receptive mode for law of attraction to bring you more things that feel good.
Yes, this is perfect. So what I really wanted to share today with your listeners specifically is I wanted to share 2 ways that you can work with your nervous system that's going to help in their work with law of attraction. So the first way is about noticing when you don't feel good.
Yeah.
So with Abraham and Esther Hicks, we would call that the contrast. So in the energetic field, earlier we referenced if you have a trauma and you repress it, it comes back. So in the energetic field, we're capable of not giving our emotions a voice. We're capable of repressing it and focusing on something else and, watching Netflix or just going to sleep or what have you. But when we allow our body to talk to us, and I have to say, it's not going to make sense a lot of the times. You'll be like, there's no reason that I'm sad, but my body's feeling sad. That's fine. It doesn't have to make sense. But when you allow your body to talk to us, it's like you're giving it the microphone and you're giving it the voice. And in doing that, you're allowing it to close out its cycle. And sometimes you will understand why you're having a feeling and sometimes you won't. Yeah. But by allowing it to have a voice, to have a minute, to be recognized and honored, then you allow it to be released from your field.
Oh, I love that. I love this so much.
Yes. Oh. And then when we release the discomfort and the sadness and the grief and the whatever, when we release that, then energetically, if like from an energetic field perspective, you have a much clearer vibration.
Yes. But how do you do that?
Attract. How
do you release it?
Yeah. This is how I got into emotional intelligence work, was how the heck do I stop feeling all the bad things that I'm feeling? There's several different ways. I'm a big fan of the Sedona method. But But personally, with the Sedona method, that works best if you have a facilitator. You can do it by yourself. But if there's something where I've really been struggling to release it, I go to the Sedona method. Another favorite of mine is, I forget what it's called. I call it inner dialogue. So if I'm having an emotion, a lot of times just naming it and breathing through it is enough. But if it continues to come back after I've named it, like let's say I'm feeling embarrassment about something, then I'll have an inner dialogue with different aspects or archetypes of myself. So I'll ask like, okay, what's my childhood self think about this? What's my professional self think about this? And I'll let them all have their voice. And sometimes they'll kind of argue with each other, but it's a more thorough way of getting to different aspects. Because typically if there's an emotion, if I can just name it and breathe through it, honestly, usually stuff releases pretty easily. But if something really is getting stuck, I find it helpful to have different aspects, different perspectives coming in to share what they have to share about it. And it sounds silly to kind of be like, well, what does baby Amy think of this? But it's really helpful.
Not really too silly. I mean, Abraham talks about this. Abraham talks about how when you're having negative emotion, that means that you're out of alignment with your inner being, with your higher self. So that just means that your higher self is thinking a different thought than you're thinking. Because you cannot experience negative emotion when you're in alignment with your true self. So that makes perfect sense. And that's what Abraham promotes is when you're feeling that way, ask yourself, how does my higher self think and feel about this right now? And that's what you're doing. Only you're taking it a step further and acknowledging all these different aspects of personality and who you are and your own uniqueness of who you are in this moment based on your history. And you're just working through all those different elements. I love that.
Yeah. Well, and in that example of the embarrassment, I would have asked my like professional self, and then I call her baby Amy, but I imagine like a 4 to 6 year old version of me. I'll ask baby Amy, like, what are you worried about? And with embarrassment, baby Amy always feels not safe. It's a very primal, it's not safe for me to be here. And then that is then when my higher self can come in and go, oh, but we are safe and we know that. And I get to kind of love on my childhood self and make her feel okay. And then that helps me get back into alignment. Whereas before I invited baby Amy's perspective and I thought it was just embarrassment and I didn't realize there was also this layer of not feeling safe, it was harder for me to get into alignment with my higher self.
That is so healing. That's healing things that have happened in your past that maybe you don't even know what it was that put that there, but there's a tie. And you can acknowledge it and you can cut the tie and let it go and let it heal.
Yeah.
That's really good advice for all of you listening. Like just try that. I mean, don't you think like anybody can do this?
Definitely.
This is something that
anybody can do that.
All you have to do is try it. And a lot of people don't know to ask. Like I've never done this before. I don't sit and ask, well, what does the younger version of me think of this? But you can and see where it takes you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's not something I have to do every day for every emotion. A lot of emotions I can just identify and going, oh, I'm feeling anger. Of course I'm feeling anger. This situation, that's normal, a human response. Okay, I'll breathe it out and then I'll get back into alignment. And then there's some times when I'm like, this one is really staying in my body. How do I address it? So in terms of manifestation, it's like we think of clutter on our desk clutters our mind. It makes us harder to focus. Well, clutter in our energetic field, which is comprised of our emotions as well as other things, but clutter in our energetic field then sends mixed signals to the universe. And so it either delays our timeline for law of attraction or it just gets it sort of garbled, which is fine. But this is a way that we can like really up level the way that we manifest.
You're clearing out the resistance. When you have a path without resistance, things manifest very quickly because you're in alignment, you're feeling good. Those things come into your experience much quicker. But when you have those resistant things, which you know you're having because of how you feel, you're tuning into that, then you can look at it and go, okay, I can get that rock off my path. I can move that log off my path and clear the resistance to open it up. And then you do start to see more positive manifestations. But I want to add also that negative experiences are also manifestations. So
Yeah.
if you are in that negative state and you're not clearing these things out, you're holding yourself in resistance, and that's why things aren't getting better. Have you been considering one-on-one sessions with me? Well, if you have, I wanted to let you know that there's actually 2 ways to go about doing that. You can go the therapy route, or you can go the coaching route. I am a licensed mental health counselor here in the state of Washington, and I'm actually registered as a telehealth provider. So this is something that might even be covered with your insurance company. And what you can do is you can go to the Northwest Regional Telehealth Resource Center, or NRTRC for short, and you can find me there in Sequim, Washington, Sequim. So if you're in Washington and you're looking to have therapy with a mental health counselor, you can work with me. And we can do that virtually. That's what telehealth is. It allows us to meet without having to be in person. So what you do is you go to www.nrtrc.org and search for behavioral health in Sequim, Washington. And you'll find Dr. Williams, LLC is there. And that's how you schedule with me for therapy sessions. If you're wanting coaching sessions, you just go to my website, www.drwilliamspodcast.com. Right on the home page, there's a button there that says Work with Dr. Williams, and it'll take you to my scheduling calendar where you can set up a free 15-minute consult so that we can talk about it and see if it feels like it would be a good fit for you. Even if you've done traditional therapy in the past or coaching sessions with someone else and you felt like it wasn't a good fit, I get that. But I encourage you to give me a chance because I do things a little bit differently, and I might be the fit that you've been looking for. So there's really nothing to lose. Set up the consult. We'll just have a chat and see how you feel about it. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
And I have such empathy for people like your friend that say, I only feel anger, because at that level of awareness, it's really hard to clear things out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that he's not clearing things out. He might be, because a lot of times we don't have to have a cognitive process. We can just take deep breaths and move our body, and that shifts the energy. But in general, it's like walking around with a list of emotions and really being able to identify, okay, this sadness is despondency, or I feel forlorn versus I feel depressed.
Yeah.
Those words actually are really helpful and can over time increase our awareness to make it easier to heal those things.
Well, you start to see the subtleties in the difference in those emotions, because that's either moving up the scale or moving down the scale.
Yes.
Whether it's even a small little subtle difference.
But it's true. It is so true. Thank you for mentioning the emotional scale. And it's like people want to go from depression to joy, and that's way too big a jump.
Yes.
But you can go from depression to anger. And that's a really healthy size jump, but it's a powerful one. So yes, that's exactly right. And the emotional scale is a great list of words for if people are looking for like, how do I expand my vocabulary? Just Google Abraham Esther Hicks emotional scale.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Something that you said on the podcast, Amy has a podcast called Living Out Love, and I was listening to it, and you mentioned how the nervous system, that is how we experience emotion, whether we think about that or not, right? We just kind of, we're so used to feeling emotion that we don't really think about our body as kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's understanding the emotion. It's
its own intelligence.
Thank you. But the physical experience of spirituality is centered in the nervous system. And that, oh my gosh, when you said that, I was like, that's really big to understand, because it connects your emotions to spirit. And most people don't make that jump of when I'm feeling something, that is actually me and connecting with my higher power. That's communication.
Yes. And what's fascinating for me as a psychic is I always thought that if I was blending with spirit, that I would feel a deep sense of peace. That's what spirit felt like. And sometimes it does. Sometimes there's this deep sort of, I want to call it like a low hum. It's not low vibration, but like a low hum of joy and peace and connection. Sometimes
subtle.
That's what
you mentioned that it's subtle.
Yeah. And it can feel very grounded. And then there's other times when spiritual connection feels very buzzy. It feels fast, and that's it's a higher vibration spiritual connection, but both things are true. No emotion, we call negative emotions negative because they don't feel good, but there's no such thing as like a negative emotion. It's all human and they all have their purpose. So it's the same thing with our vibrations. So when I connect with spirit in a meditation and I feel very peaceful and grounded, that's going to have a lower vibration than when I'm connecting with spirit to do like a mediumship reading. That feels very fast and buzzy. It's both spirit. Neither one is better than the other, but they're just different vibrations.
Which you are knowing because of your response physically with your nervous system.
Exactly. And, we talked before, I said, I want to share 2 things about how to help you with manifestation.
Yes.
The first one was clear out the clutter, allow the negative emotion to be there, find a way to release it. And that's going to bring more clarity to your energetic field and help you manifest without the resistance. The second thing is when you are in alignment, then take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So if you're having one of those days where you're hitting all green lights and the birds are chirping, or where you just woke up feeling, some days you wake up and you're like, I could do 30 push-ups and I couldn't do any push-ups yesterday. Like if you're having one of those days, then really step into it. And that is a day to combine the other aspects of manifestation, like our vision work. And how do I want to feel? Like those are really strong days to do that. So it's just taking advantage of when your nervous system is naturally in alignment. That's a day to go back and look at your vision board.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Go back and stand there and be like, yeah, I'm calling it in. I'm already in it. Like just really run with it.
Milk it. Totally milk it.
Milk it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've been starting to, first thing in the morning when I first wake up, I just focus on how comfortable my bed is, right? Put you in that state of appreciation right out the gate to give you a step in that direction. Because your first thought can determine whether you're picking up the stress from yesterday or you're heading into a new day with a positive focus.
Right.
And then that can start building some momentum. And then, I agree with you. That's the time to think specifically about what you want to manifest.
Right.
When you're not feeling so good, you got to go general. But when you are feeling good, get really specific and enjoy that, appreciate it, and feel it to the fullest.
Yes, absolutely. And I just think one other thing about kind of our emotions and the nervous system in general is I feel like we want to understand it so much. And that's helpful to have some cognitive awareness. Definitely. It's healing, and to have that, just that self-awareness of who we are and how we show up in the world. But just trusting that it has its own intelligence is really key. I went on a personal retreat recently where it was just me, no kids, no husband, just me. And I was out hiking and I got up to the top of this mountain and I had this just release of emotion where I was crying and then I was laughing and then I cried some more. And in the moment, I just allowed myself to have the emotion. I was like, I'm not even going to try to guess at what this is because then it's going to shut it down. So I'm just going to allow it out. And then afterwards, I was realizing there's so many things. There was grief, there was connection, there was gratitude. There was so much in there. And it really felt to me like spirit was just taking advantage of the adrenaline that I had in my system. And then the emotion that I had at the peak of the mountain, it was just taking advantage of the opportunity to release. And was like, let's release a bunch of stuff. Like, let's get it all out. And so I just use that as an example for people, because with both emotional intelligence and with nervous system, I think there's an element of trust where we just have to trust that our emotions are working for us, our nervous system and spirit is working for us. And sometimes we're not going to be able to make sense of why our body is doing what it's doing, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But if we just ride the wave, we allow it to be there, we're going to be better off.
So my understanding of like crying, for instance, is crying is always when you're releasing resistance. It's a good thing. But I have to tell you, I am a crier and it bothers me because I don't have a lot of control over my emotions and I feel them in a really big, overwhelming kind of way. Like when I was younger and my mom would take me to church, like when everybody would sing, I'd cry.
Yeah. Oh, me too.
It was just like overwhelming. Like, or if you're in like a big place and everybody starts clapping and I'm like, oh, I'm crying over here. And I feel what I wanted to say is like even little things. My husband and I have been watching Survivor, like big time into Survivor right now. And the episode where their loved ones come and they get them, oh my, I cry every time. And I can see my husband out of the corner of my eye look at me because he's like, okay, are the tears flowing yet? But I don't want to full on blubber watching Survivor, so I hold it in. And it doesn't feel good to do that. It feels kind of heavy in my chest when I hold it in. And I was just curious. This wasn't even on like things I wanted to ask you, but since it came up, like, what do you say to that? What do you say to people that try to hold their emotions in like that?
So I'm going to give a shout out. A lot of my professional work has been with the organization Leading Consciously, that's headed up by Dr. Jean Ladding. And her vision is that people would go to work in a culture where it's normal to cry, because you're not bringing your whole self if you're not allowing your emotion to be there. So I just want to share it because I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. You're absolutely right that anytime we repress an emotion, it's really uncomfortable. Just like this, it's the same thing with a different emotion. If you think anger, it feels way better in our body to try to punch something or yell when we're angry than it does to take a deep breath and go for a walk. Because at first it can feel like we're repressing it, and it doesn't feel good to repress it. Those emotions want to be expressed. That's the energy, it's moving, it wants to be expressed. So you're absolutely right that it feels bad. It really is not comfortable to repress it.
Yeah, to hold it in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally think that if you are a very emotional person, as long as you have your awareness of it, and as long as you can forgive yourself when you're emotional, when you don't want to be, and you can kind of wait to cry till after the meeting when possible, that is often one of your greatest strengths, both from a leadership perspective and from a spiritual perspective. Highly emotional people tend to be the most resilient if it's coupled with self-awareness.
Wow. That's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try that. I'm blubbering the next time I'm crying.
Just let
Survivor.
it flow.
I'm just going to let it out.
Let it flow. And I think, my podcast called Living Out Love, I'm all about love. I think in a situation like that, or in a situation, if you're in a group and everybody's clapping, you're really tuning into the beauty of the collective experience and the human experience, which to me just says you're a beautiful, advanced soul. And our culture might say, oh, what a crybaby. Let them say it.
Yeah.
Let them say it. That what a beautiful gift that we have, that we get to be so moved.
That's true.
I would way rather be overly sensitive and get to be so moved by anything than to not feel.
Would you say that that is a degree of emotional intelligence when you allow yourself to feel that? You're sensitive to it. You're really in tune with your emotions because of that. Is that a true statement?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just allowing.
Well, that's quite the compliment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Helps me to feel like I can cry. I'm going to go forth and cry.
Yes. Everybody, let's all just cry and normalize it. Because part of the reason that we don't like crying is because then other people are going to come up to us and it's going to get awkward. And they're going to be like, oh, don't cry. Oh, it's going to be okay. And you're like, yeah, everything is okay. I'm just crying. Yes, nothing's wrong. Right. I'm just crying. So if we could all just normalize the crying. So we could all learn how to deal with it. It's not something that needs to be fixed. We're human, having a human experience, and it's all good.
Well, I didn't expect that to come out today in our interview, but I'm glad it did.
Yeah, me too. This has been such a lovely conversation. Thank you for having me on.
No, I appreciate you being here. You mentioned that you've worked with businesses, and do you work with entrepreneurs? What kind of thing could you offer to anybody listening who wants to work with you?
Sure. So working specifically with businesses, I would do that through Leading Consciously, which they could go to leadingconsciously.com. And as I mentioned, Dr. Jean Ladding before, I work for her over there. And then on the more like spiritual side of things, I have my intuitive business, which is sometimes intuitive coaching rather than just like giving a reading. And they could find me at amyhageman.love. That's the website, and that's the Instagram and Facebook handle as well.
Awesome. And then you guys can go and check out the Living Out Love podcast and listen to more about what Amy has to say. So I really appreciated this. I appreciate your perspective, and this helped me grow in my understanding of how the nervous system is really there to help me understand my emotions to a greater degree. And I thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Oh, thank you so much. It's just been such a joy to be here.
That concludes this episode, but if you don't want to wait for the next episode to come out, I have more for you at drwilliamspodcast.com. You can learn more about me and my journey to podcasting, find all the ways to connect with me on social media, and there's a button to subscribe so you're the first to know what's new and upcoming. You also can shoot me an email at hello@drwilliamspodcast.com. You are so special to me, and your support does not go unnoticed. I want to support you too. This podcast is my outlet for growth because when you teach something, you hold yourself accountable and apply the information in life. But the inspiration for these episodes comes in a variety of ways, and one of those is through you. I want you to feel like this is your show too. So send me a message and let me know which episode is your favorite and why. And tell me if there's a topic you'd want to hear me talk about. Your feedback applies to so many people, and your suggestion could change someone's life for the better. The best way to do this is by subscribing to the show and leaving a review through your favorite podcast platform. I really listen to you guys, and this dialogue feeds my soul. You say that you're a fan of me, but truth be told, I am a fan of yours. Everything is working out for each of us, and we're all in this together.